Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Raina McDonald and I am with Glitter and Glue Card Making Club. I love to make handmade greeting cards using all kinds of designers and suppliers. And today I'm going to show you how to make this double triangle fun fold card. So let's get started. This is a style of card that I've made many times, and this one that I'm showing you as a sample is made using Annie's Card Kit supplies. And this one is a all-purpose card. It basically is for any occasion. It could be a birthday, it could be a thinking of you card. It basically says that friends are the sunshine of life. This card opens two ways. One flap opens to the top and one opens to the side. Today I'm going to show you that by changing up the cardstock and the designer series paper, we will be able to create a different looking card entirely, and we'll be making a birthday card. So today we'll be using an 8.5 by 11 sheet of yellow crushed curry paper, and we will be cutting it into along the diagonal. Now, using a paper trimmer, you're going to line up the 2 points of the diagonal corners and along the cutting edge or the channel in this style of paper trimmer. When you go to cut the paper, make sure your blade starts in the middle of the paper, not outside the paper along the edge of the tip of the corner. If it does that, you will probably snag the corner, and you don't want to do that. Your paper trimmer may not be quite long enough to get the entire corner to corner, and if that's the case, you will have to take out the paper and trim off the very bottom part using scissors. So now I have two pieces of triangle paper that I can use to make the card bases for the folds. I can actually end up with 2 cards per each 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So now I'm going to show you how to score the triangle to make the double triangle fold for the card base. This paper trimmer is from Stampin Up, and it has a score blade built into the trimmer. So you can use this style, or you can use a Score Buddy or any other scoring tool. Now I'm lining this up along the long edge of the triangle, and I'm going to score it at 5.5 inches. Be careful you get it lined up right here, and I'm using the bottom measurements to see where this is. Now be careful that you're using your score tool, not your cutting tool at this point. The second score line is going to be along the shorter edge of the triangle, and that is going to be scored at 4.25 inches. Now you want to make sure you haven't flipped over your cardstock so that you don't end up creating a mountainside fold on one side and a valley side fold on the other side. You want them to both be either valley or mountain. And what I mean by that is when you look at the cardstock, you can see a ridge where the score line is on one side and an indentated part on the opposite side. This indentated part is called the valley score line, and the ridge side is called the mountain score line. So now you're going to fold the card base along the 2 scored lines, and using your bone folder burnish it to a good sharp crease. This card base can be opened to the right and up to the top, or you can flip it around and open it to the left and down. Either direction, whichever one you prefer, will work. Now I'm going to show you how to cut the coordinating cardstock layers and the designer series paper layers for the triangle flaps on the front of the card. I'm not actually going to cut these designer series papers because I'm going to use them for a card making workshop I'm going to be doing later this month. But I've already prepared a couple which I can use. However, this is the way it would be done. You use the same method as for cutting the triangle card base. You put the points of the corners into the trimmer channel, and you make sure you use your cutting blade. At this time you're going to be cutting up and down, starting in the middle of the card. you will end up with two triangle shapes that will fit into the front flaps on the card. So you're basically going to repeat the same process with the Coastal Cabana colored cardstock layer. This piece is cut at 4 by 5¼ inches. You're going to put the points in the channel and you're going to cut it into two triangles, which will layer underneath the designer series paper as well. So working with the pieces that I have previously cut, I had a Coastal Cabana rectangle that was 4 inches across by 5¼ inches long, cut on the diagonal, and now I've done the same thing with the patterned paper. This piece originally measured 3¾ across and 5 inches down. So it's been cut on the diagonal to fit into the other Coastal Cabana triangles. You don't have to use the Coastal Cabana layer if you don't want to. You could always use this pattern paper directly on the card base. I just think it adds a little more interest by putting the contrasting border around the designer series paper, period. Now, I've done the same thing with another corresponding piece of paper. I'm changing out the second or bottom triangle with the one that has the dots on it. This coordinates with the DSP that I've used at the top. Now, because this is a directional one, the balloons, I don't want to turn it over and use it in the same pattern as the first card because the balloons will be falling down. So now I'm going to, on the second card, put the balloons on the bottom triangle, and this non-directional dot paper I can use on the top. So that'll be the second card. So now I am going to adhere these patterned paper triangles to the Coastal Cabana triangles. I want to leave a 1/8 inch border around all three sides. I'm going to be using a tape runner adhesive for these pieces, and you're going to want to be very careful when you adhere them. Using this kind of adhesive, there's no give. You can't reposition them. Once they are down, it's down for good. They're permanent. Now I'm going to work on the inside of the card. I like to do my inside stamping before I assemble the card, because if I make a mistake, I can fix it before I use any of my patterned paper or my design elements. I'm using a Coastal Cabana layer, which is 4 inches across by 5¼ inches long, so it fits right on the inside of the card. And I'm going to use a piece of basic white cardstock which measures 3¾ inches across by 5 inches long, and so it fits inside the Coastal Cabana to have a 1/8 inch border. My sentiment is from the Stampin' Up stamp set called Sweet Sentiments, and I am using the stamp that says, "Hoping your day is perfect." This is one of my favorite sentiments for the inside of a birthday card. I'm using the Melon Mambo ink pad, which coordinates with the balloons in the designer series paper. So this is a red rubber cling stamp, which means it has a built-in foam piece on the stamp itself, so I don't need the Stampin' Pierce mat to get a good impression. And it's upside down. Okay. What did I say about fixing mistakes? This is a perfect example. It's a rookie mistake, but I'm still making it after all these years. So I'm just going to flip this one over and try again. This is why you do a practice stamp before you actually stamp on your cardstock. Okay, that's much better, and I even think it's a little straighter. The next stamp I'm using is from another Stampin' Up set called Honeycomb Happiness, which is a celebration set from a couple of years back. I'm going to use the balloon stamp to place next to the sentiment on the side, and I'm using the Coastal Cabana ink. I'm just going to clean both of my stamps here before I go any further. I'll either put my elbow in it or I'll put it upside down on a piece of paper that I don't want stamped on. So just using my chamois to get as much ink off as I can. So having fixed my rookie mistake, I am now going to adhere the basic white cardstock to the Coastal Cabana layer using the tape runner again. And I am then going to be adhering the entire assembly to the inside of the card base. And I am adhering the front panels to the triangle flaps on the front of the card base. And I want to make sure that my directional pattern paper is pointing up in the right direction. The sentiment stamp that I'm using on the front of the card is a simple but very pretty happy birthday from this stamp and die combo set, which is from Sizzix by Ellison. The stamped sentiments actually coordinate and fit perfectly within these nesting shaped label dies. There are actually two sets here. One of them is 4 sentiments that say happy birthday, feel better soon, congrats, and thank you. And then the other one says all my love, celebrate, sending hugs, and thank you. I'm using the stamp that coordinates with this shaped die, but I am not going to be using the die. I'm using a circle die layered on a starburst circle as well. Now, the circle die is actually a Heartfelt Creations set, and it has a coordinating back layer, but I am not interested in the back layer for this that matches that circle. I want to use this starburst layer, which is from a different die set, and it's actually a generic die. I'm not sure where it came from. I keep my dies on these magnetic sheets so that it can be handy to the die cutting machine, and I don't necessarily keep them according to the owner, but I can see this circle coordinates with this scalloped circle layer. But I'm not interested in a scallop frilly one. I want the starburst one so it's not so girly. So I'm going to take this Melon Mambo cardstock layer and the basic white circle that I've stamped with the happy birthday sentiment using the Melon Mambo ink to coordinate with the cardstock and the designer series paper. I'm layering the sentiment on top of the starburst circle, and then I'm going to adhere them to the front of the card. I made some balloons on my brother's Scan and Cut and sized them to be the right fit for the front of this card, and I made some strings to go along with that. I used a product called Glossy Accents on these balloons. Now, Glossy Accents is a clear high gloss glue, and you adhere it to your product and then you let it dry, and when it's dried after maybe several hours, you get this very high gloss finish effect. Hard to see here, but I think you get the point. And that I did in advance. I did that and let it dry overnight. You need to give it at least a couple of hours. I'm going to use glue dot here to adhere the little strings to the back of the balloons. You wouldn't have to use a glue dot here. If you prefer, you could use a drop of liquid glue or even a piece of tape runner. I used the glue dots because I like the tiny dots, the precision of adhering it, just this tiny string. And I'm using the ones that actually came in the paper pumpkin kit for this past month. But any glue dot or any other adhesive would do just fine. I want one of these balloons to be flat on the card and the other to be popped up. So I am using a larger glue dot to adhere the yellow balloon down first. These glue dots come between two small pieces of plastic. I really like them, but they can be a little tricky. And as you can see, I got into a little bit of a problem with this one and gummed it all up, so I'm going to dispose of that one and get a new glue dot and try again. Now when I place this balloon on the card, I want to do it so that the strings actually face towards or point towards the center of the flap so that it can be covered with the sentiment when I put it on. And now I've decided I need a little piece of a little dot of glue, liquid glue, under the string to keep it in the right position. So I'm just adding a little dot of liquid glue before I put on the second balloon. Now this one I'm using 2-dimensional foam dots to adhere it in place on the card, and this will give it a little extra element of elevation, and that element of elevation gives it a little more interest. Again, I want the strings to be towards the center, to be covered by the sentiment strip, and I'm going to use another dot of liquid glue to make that happen. So the sentiment is going to be popped up on dimensionals, but you have to be careful where you put the dimensionals. I want to put them only on the bottom part of the circle so that it doesn't stick to the top flap of the card under where the balloons are, or it won't open. So I position my sentiment circle on the front of the card, lining it up with the strings of the balloons and the top flap versus the bottom flap. And I try and make sure that I don't adhere any dimensionals to the top part. So having figured that out, I just put a couple of dimensionals on this part of the circle, and then I adhere them to the bottom flap of the card only. So my card is almost finished. I just need to add some bling. As anybody who knows me can testify, I am a glitter girl from way back. Anything that is sparkly gets my attention. So I'm using some tiny 3mm multicolored rhinestones that I got at a Stampin' Craft expo a couple of years back, and I'm just picking the colors that I think go well with this card, and I'm adhering them using the sticky back glue that's already on the card. But I have to cut them. They're in a strip, so I cut out one at a time to put them on the card in the spots that I want. One of my rhinestones didn't stick, it lost its glue dot on the back, so I have used a dot of liquid glue to put it in place, and then using my tweezers to stick it in the right spot. And then I just add a few more. I think I used 6 or 7 rhinestones on this one because they are very tiny. The last one is going to go on the sentiment circle itself. And there we are, done. So here's my finished card. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit the thumbs up button below and give it a like. And if you'd like to see more videos by me, please hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell. Thanks for watching.